Call the Honourable David Parker.
Mr Chairman, referring to Clause 3 in the bill, I'm asking the Minister and the Chair to take a call and to advise the House whether the rates that are being proposed in Clause 3, the income tax rates, which, according to this clause, and I'll read it out, income tax imposed by Section VB1 of the Income Tax Act 2007 must, for the 2011-12 year, be paid at the basic rate specified in Schedule 1 of the Act. Now, my reading of that is that the rates of income tax are not being adjusted for the losses that most New Zealanders in KiwiSaver are suffering as a consequence of the decrease in the tax credits applying for KiwiSaver. That's my understanding of it, that despite the fact that people are losing the member tax credit, that the effective tax burden that they suffer in New Zealand is greater, their income tax isn't going down. That's my reading of Clause 3 of this bill. And it would be good if the Minister could take a call to confirm that that is the case, that the tax credits are going down, so they haven't got the old benefit that they had for their savings under KiwiSaver, but their income tax rates under Clause 3 of this bill remain unadjusted, and that therefore they are worse off. So could the Minister take a call in respect of that point? The second point that I would like the Minister to confirm is that the adjustments that are made to working for families are of similar effect, that the middle class tax bill after working for families in the later part of the bill, which takes money off them, is not adjusted in this part of the bill by an amendment to the income tax rates. Mr Chairman, at the same time, I would be grateful for the Minister to explain why, if I'm right in that, how it's fair that the disproportionate tax cuts that went to higher income earners in respect to their income tax cuts in last budget, and remember, I think that the statistic that we were given was that 42% of the income tax cuts last year went to the top 10% of income earners, why it is that there's not some redistribution between that group of society, 10% that got the tax cuts last year, given that if I'm right in my assessment of what happens overall in this bill, why is it, Mr Chairman, that there isn't some redistribution so as to make that fair? Because it doesn't seem to me to be fair. Similarly, why is it that there are no significant changes to the rates of income tax in respect of the farming sector? Now we had that headline in the paper yesterday, and I actually agree with some of the criticisms that were made by some of what I think was sub-editorial changes to the heading there, which suggested that there was $500,000 of income and a small amount of tax being paid, and it didn't make it clear whether it was gross income or net income, and that shouldn't have been the case. It didn't make it clear that it was net income or gross income, and some people like Amy Adams read it and chose to interpret it as being a reference to net income, which it never was. But, Mr Speaker, nonetheless it was clear that there was insufficient rate of income tax effectively being paid, I think, by the rural sector. And why is it that this isn't addressed here? And is it right, Mr Chairman, to the Minister, is it right that the only change that is signalled in respect of those tax settings is a future review as to the livestock valuation schemes that are open to farmers? Because one of the ways in which those effective income tax rates are low in practice for the farming sector, Mr Chairman, is that they can, Mr Chairman,
Honourable David Parker.
one of the ways in which the farming sector can effectively minimise their taxes in New Zealand is they can opt in and out of different livestock valuation schemes. And at the moment, if the value of livestock is going up, they can opt into the capital scheme, and the increase in value is not attributable to them for tax purposes because it falls into a capital scheme. But when it goes the other way, at the moment farmers can opt out of the capital scheme and go into the revenue-based scheme for the valuation of livestock, and the value of their livestock goes in and they decrease their income for tax purposes on that part of the cycle. So they capitalise the upside and they put into the revenue scheme. Now, even that isn't fixed in this budget. The government knows that that's a problem that decreases the effective rate of tax, and these tax rates are set by Clause 3 of this bill for the forthcoming year, and they could have fixed that in this bill this year by saying that that's plainly wrong, but no, all they've done is they've said, as far as I'm aware, and I've seen the press release from the Honourable Peter Dunn today, that they're going to look at that in the future, and I congratulate them for doing that because it's better than doing nothing. But given how little tax is being paid by this sector, looking at it and maybe doing something tomorrow is actually better summed at being as being doing nothing in this budget, because nothing is done in this budget to remedy that. Now, that's one of a number of areas of unfairness in the tax system relating to farmers, and thank you for the Minister for identifying that one, but there's a long list that I haven't got time to go into today of other things that aren't being fixed. So I come back to my primary point. Will the Minister confirm that, notwithstanding the other changes to taxes for individuals that increase their effective tax burden of middle-class people and KiwiSaver and middle-income people that are having their working for families abatements made more severe, the income tax rates that this Clause 3 in Part 1 of this bill sets remain unchanged, and so the net effect of both of those things is that their tax payments in effect go up, and that, notwithstanding that last year we had 42% of the income tax going to the top 10%, that is not going to be revisited, and instead there's an increase in middle-class tax burden. There's an increase in middle-class tax burden. Thank you,
Mr Chairman.
The Honourable Peter Dunn.